This is my last lecture.
Yeah.
After my election, I have more flexibility.
Yeah, I understand. I transmit this information to Vladimir and let them with me.
With the re-election of Barack Obama, the danger of a thermonuclear conflict is still a very present threat, and this will remain the case until something is done which changes the dynamic as a whole. Within the context of the present mode of strategic thinking, within the context of a dying system, there is no solution to the crisis. Something must be brought into play which changes the dynamic of the system as a whole. With the meteor strike of mid-February, the continued offer by the Russians for international collaboration on the strategic defense of Earth from threats from space has come increasingly to the front. This has the potential to change the game, so to speak. Now, if the change does not come, the threat of extinction remains, whether it come from a strike from space or by our own hand.
Мы открыты к диалогу.
At all stages of the escalation toward thermonuclear war between the United States and Russia, the Russians have consistently reiterated their desire for dialogue.
Maintain dialogue. That's exactly what we will
That the
do.
issue at hand, namely the expansion of forward-based anti-ballistic missile systems in the name of defending NATO, can be resolved peacefully and legally. This has been their stance. At the same time, however, with the absence of any meaningful agreements from the United States, the Russians have been keeping pace in maintaining the strategic balance. For the first time in a very long time, they have exercised their strategic forces, which is the organization responsible for carrying out thermonuclear operations. They are working toward deployment of a new ICBM, capable, they assert, of breaking through modern defenses. For the first time since the Cold War era, Russia is considering re-establishing a permanent naval presence in the Mediterranean. The list goes on. We see how instability and conflict are spreading around the world today. Armed conflict continues in the Middle East and Asia, and the danger of export of radicalism and chaos continues to grow in our neighboring regions. At the same time, we see methodical attempts to undermine the strategic balance in various ways and forces. The United States has essentially launched now the second phase of its global missile defense system. There are attempts to sound out possibilities for expanding NATO further eastward, and there is also the danger of the militarization of the Arctic. These challenges, just a few among the many Russia faces, are of direct concern to our national interests and therefore also determine our priorities. Vladimir Kozin, a researcher at the Russian Institute of Strategic Studies and a member of the working group around the presidential administration, had the following to say in an article for the Moscow Times. U.S. operational missile defense systems to be deployed in Romania and Poland in 2015 and 2018 respectively are not designed to intercept potential ballistic missiles launched by Iran, the reason that the U.S. gave for introducing the missile shield. This is a task of the missile defense systems of the United States and its allies deployed in the Gulf region. The only purpose of the U.S. missile defense equipment deployed in Europe is to destroy Russian intercontinental ballistic missiles. The fact that our country is never mentioned in the Missile Shield program as a potential participant proves that it is aimed at Russia. Russia is missing from both the NATO Missile Defense Action Plan and the U.S. and alliance's rules of engagement concerning the use of anti-ballistic missiles, endorsed shortly after the NATO Chicago summit last year. While the United States under Barack Obama continually denies that these systems are aimed at Russia, a feature article published in the Strategic Studies Quarterly, the journal of the U.S. Air Force's Air University, makes the argument that the United States is knowingly pursuing a strategy of strategic primacy against any potential adversaries, meaning that Washington seeks the ability to defeat enemy nuclear forces as well as other WMD, but that U.S. nuclear weapons are but one dimension of that effort. In fact, the effort to neutralize adversary strategic forces, that is, achieve strategic primacy, spans nearly every realm of warfare. For example, ballistic missile defense, anti-submarine warfare, intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance systems, offensive cyber warfare, conventional precision strike, and long-range precision strike, in addition to nuclear strike capabilities. The paper, written by Keir A. Lieber at Georgetown and Darrell G. Press at Dartmouth, makes the argument that technological innovation has dramatically improved the ability of states to launch counterforce attacks, that is, military strikes aimed at disarming an adversary by destroying its nuclear weapons. Over the course of their paper, they assert that the Cold War axioms of mutual and assured destruction and deterrence no longer apply. An 85-page report issued by the Izborsk Club of Russia, penned by General Leonid Ivashov, academician Sergei Glaziev, editors Alexander Prokhanov and Alexander Nagorny from Zavtra, historian Andrei Fursov, and others, points to the use of diplomacy in terms of disarmament agreements as another means by which to obviate the second strike capability and nullify the doctrine of mutual and assured destruction. Washington is escalating its efforts to achieve overwhelming military technological superiority over Russia, such that the RF would dismantle its strategic nuclear arsenal, thus losing its retaliatory nuclear strike capability and, consequently, losing strategic parity with the USA. Washington is pursuing this goal both by developing advanced strategic rearmament programs and through diplomatic efforts to impose upon Russia strategic and conventional arms reduction agreements that are advantageous to the USA. This weakening will be accomplished through a series of disarmament agreements, reducing Russia's strategic nuclear missile potential as well as tactical nuclear weapons to a minimum. In discussions with Lyndon LaRouche, he emphasized that while the danger of an outright thermonuclear war is very real, it is important to keep a clear head on this in terms of strategy. The United States is not impervious.
Well, you have to understand this, you have to go to one thing, the British monarchy. The British monarchy's intention is to reduce the population of the planet. The amount is specific. It's to reduce it from 7 billion to 1 billion, or approximately that. That's the intention. That's the policy. The Queen has made it very clear, very precise. All her flunkies in their various meetings have said so. That's the intention. The intention is to reduce the human species from 7 billion persons to the order of 1. That's the intention. That's what the Queen intends. And all this chatter about this, invulnerability crap, there is no such thing as invulnerability. It doesn't exist. You got Russia, China, and India, which are not small countries and not with very limited resources. And you don't know, and there's a big freak out in the administration here. They don't know what the Chinese capabilities are. So the whole thing is a bluff, and it's in the nature of things that these, the idea that the unknown weapons, secret weapons that nobody knows, it's already settled. This thing is an old story. It's only a bluff. No doubt the horror end of this thing is tremendous. But the idea that the United States has an impervious capability against anyone it chooses, that is a fraud.
As with the blowout of the financial system, the solution to the strategic problem will never be found from within the terms of thinking within the system. It's a systemic breakdown crisis, and both the financial side and the strategic side are facets of the same problem. Nothing within the terms of the system will solve it. As with the bailout approach to finances, where every decision only serves to accelerate the dynamic of hyperinflation, any approach to strategic defense, which does not include collaboration, will intensify the danger of thermonuclear war. The doctrine of mutual and assured destruction must come to be superseded by a policy of mutual and assured survival. The case for collaboration between the United States and Russia, among others, has been reiterated many times over since the meteor which struck Earth in mid-February. Vladimir Kozin, who penned the Moscow Times article assessing the threat to Russia from the United States, also put the question of the defense of Earth front and center. Quite frankly, instead of thinking how to encircle Russia with nuclear and missile defense weapons, the American side should think about how it can work together with us and other interested parties to prevent meteorites from raining down on our planet. It's been reported that on Tuesday, March 5th, Sergei Ivanov, who is the former defense minister and current head of the Russian presidential administration, gave an interview to Pravda where he hit on the same theme. On the one hand, the very real threat of war, and on the other, the potential for collaboration. Ivanov said that the U.S. ABM system in Europe does not appear to respond to potential threats coming from North Korea and Iran. This affects Russia's strategic nuclear forces and undermines the balance of forces. In this case, Moscow can't afford a new round of nuclear arms reductions as the US currently outnumbers Russia in nuclear weapons. In the same interview, however, Ivanov had the following to say on collaboration on the defense of Earth. No country, not even the United States, can solve this alone. It is hideously expensive and very difficult. And it could only be done, as you say, with kolkhoz. I agree. And even then, I'm not sure there is a solution for it today technologically. If we're talking about large asteroids that telescopes and warning systems can pick up, then the asteroid would have to be at least 30 meters, but its speed would be enormous. And even if such an approaching asteroid could be intersected, there are no systems and technologies yet that could affect it. And as for the small ones, the one that fell in Chelyabinsk was really small, and it was actually impossible to detect it. But if we start to do something cooperatively, it is a project that will take decades, and it will probably cost billions of dollars. This is the most recent of the continued offers of collaboration coming from Russia, which have been increasing since the meteor strike of mid-February. On February 26th, ITAR TASS quoted Prime Minister Medvedev saying that a meteorite hit was a lesson to all mankind. It is necessary to look together for ways to withstand the forces of nature. That it was one more reminder that only together can we cope with some threats to mankind. The previous day, Russian Deputy Prime Minister Dmitry Rogozin had again called for an international system of anti-asteroid security. On the 18th, Lydia Ryklova of the Russian Academy of Sciences Institute of Astronomy described a 10-year program for asteroid defense which was proposed by the Academy in 2010-2011, which has been approved by the Russian Space Agency and is, in the words of Ryklova, sitting on Rogozin's desk. On the 20th, Secretary of the Russian Security Council Nikolai Patrushev gave an interview to Rossiyskaya Gazeta where he called for international cooperation and raised a challenge posed by long-period comets. Also on the 20th, Konstantin Tsipko, representative of the Federation Council from the Chelyabinsk region where the meteor hit, said it would be logical to hold an international conference with the participation of heads of state to discuss the problem of an asteroid threat to Earth. Chelyabinsk is the first city in the history of our civilization that has survived space attack. A genuine collaboration on the strategic defense of Earth is not simply an option on the table. The only way to effectively counter the threats from space is on a multinational basis. It will take the efforts of the entire human race. At the same time, this opens the door for the proper use of thermonuclear technologies as a tool for mankind. And it goes hand in hand with a solution to the financial crisis. It simply isn't possible to carry out a long-term international project within the context of a floating monetary system. Without a Glass-Steagall standard, you have no guarantee that the funds will get to where they are supposed to go. You have no foundation for long-term commitments, for long-term credit agreements. The strategic defense of the Earth is a great commitment to the future of mankind as a whole. It deserves credit.